Veteran Cole sought the solitude of the Appalachian Mountains to bury his past. His days were a quiet rhythm. Silent hunts through snowbound pines with his loyal German shepherd, Echo. But on this winter morning, that peace was shattered. Echo halted, ears sharp, his growl echoing toward a cliffside hollow that should have been empty. Trusting his companion's instincts, Cole approached cautiously. Inside the shadowed cave, beneath the weight of ice and stone, lay an impossible sight, a young woman, wounded and trembling, hiding as if the forest itself had tried to swallow her secret. Snow drifted silently through the Appalachian forest, blanketing branches and muffling sound until the woods felt like a cathedral carved from ice. Cole Thatcher walked with the patience of a man who had nowhere urgent to be, yet the set of his shoulders betrayed a soldier's posture that never quite left him. He was 43, tall and spare, 6 feet of hard muscle whittled by years of carrying weight that wasn't always his own. His face bore the quiet architecture of endurance. A square jaw softened by stubble grayed at the edges, a nose broken once and healed slightly off-center, thin lips pressed more often in silence than in speech. Pale scars drew faint lines across his cheek and above his brow, souvenirs from a war that had taken friends, laughter, and the reckless light from his eyes. Those eyes, icy blue, cold as mountain water, were the clearest evidence of what war had done. They measured first, felt later. They searched constantly, restless even in peace, as if the world itself might at any moment split open and demand he fight again. To strangers in town, Cole seemed distant, the kind of man who ordered coffee black and left without small talk. But inside him lived the constant tremor of memory, the sand-choked alleys of Kandahar, the smell of diesel fires, the shrieks of children cut short by artillery thunder. He had buried it all, or thought he had, when he retreated here to the mountains. Beside him padded Echo, his German shepherd and constant companion. Echo was 5 years old, weighing a solid 65 pounds, built with the athletic lines of his breed. Deep chest, strong legs, thick neck, and a coat marbled gray, tan, and black that seemed almost to shimmer against the snow. His ears were sharp and restless, swiveling to capture sounds Cole could not hear. His eyes, amber and unyielding, carried a keen intelligence that unnerved strangers but comforted his master. Echo was disciplined yet affectionate, a dog who could stand guard with the stillness of stone, then collapse into a nuzzle when Cole's hands were unsteady. Together they moved in rhythm, hunter and scout, though they were not hunting anything in particular today. Cole carried his rifle slung across his back more from habit than necessity. He told himself this was only a morning walk, a patrol of silence to keep the old ghosts quiet. The truth was more complicated. Out here, counting his steps in the snow, he could almost believe he was free. Cole's breath clouded in the frigid air. He tugged his wool-lined coat tighter and flexed his right shoulder, which always ached when the temperature dropped. That shoulder was his oldest scar. Shrapnel had torn through muscle years ago, leaving a stiffness that flared with cold. It was his reminder of the day his platoon had been ambushed, the day he had seen a boy with wide brown eyes staring at him through smoke and dust, a boy he could not save. That memory lived in his bones like frost, unshakable, unmerciful. The forest offered him solace. Pines rose like pillars dusted in white, their branches sagging under the burden of snow. A raven called once and was swallowed by silence. The only sounds were his boots crunching over crusted drifts and the steady rhythm of Echo's paws. Cole found himself breathing in cadence 4 counts in, 4 held, 4 out, 4 empty. It was an old soldier's trick, a way to steady the nerves when the world threatened to come apart. "Quiet day, huh, bud?" Cole murmured. His voice was low, raspy from years of cigarettes he no longer smoked. Echo flicked an ear and wagged his tail once, acknowledging without breaking stride. Then the forest shifted. It was subtle at first. The air carried a metallic tang, faint but distinct, prickling at the back of Cole's tongue. He stopped. Echo stopped a fraction of a second before him, body going rigid, one paw lifted mid-step. The dog's hackles rose, ears snapping forward, nostrils flaring. He emitted a low growl, barely more than a vibration, but Cole felt it travel up his leg like an electrical current. Cole scanned the landscape. The snow lay smooth ahead, but the ridge dropped into a narrow ravine, a wound in the earth veiled by briars and half-buried stones. The wind funneled through the gap, whistling with a voice that was almost human. Cole's gaze sharpened. There, at the edge of the ravine, snow was disturbed, pressed down in irregular shapes. Not boot prints he could read clearly, but impressions of weight, like someone had stumbled or crawled. The tang of metal in the air grew stronger. Not the oily residue of spent bullets, not the smoke of machinery, but copper and salt, the scent of blood. Cole's body slid into its old habits. His breath shortened, heart slowed, senses widened until the forest became a map of potential threats. He lowered his rifle from his shoulder, fingers wrapping around the stock with the natural ease of long training. Echo crept forward, nose twitching, tail stiff at half-mast. He looked left, then right, then down into the ravine, and did something rare. He took a cautious step backward, as if to say, "Don't trust this ground." Cole crouched beside him, placing a gloved hand on the dog's warm spine. "Easy," he whispered, though his own pulse thudded against his throat. He remembered his old sergeant's words, "Trust the dog. He doesn't see ghosts, only truth." They waited. The silence of snow pressed in. Then it came, faint, almost swallowed by the wind. A sound. Not the snap of a branch or the call of an animal, but a low moan, human, weak. Cole froze, listening harder. The moan came again, stretched thin with pain, floating up from the shadowed hollow below. His jaw tightened. It could be a trap. Criminals sometimes used cries for help to lure the compassionate, but his gut told him otherwise. The sound carried a rawness too genuine to fake, a note of suffering he had heard too many times on battlefields. He inched forward to the lip of the ravine, belly against the snow. Peering down, he saw darker shapes beneath the drift, a smear of crimson staining white, a torn scrap of fabric snagged on a branch, trembling in the wind. His breath hissed through his teeth. Whoever was down there was injured and close. Echo leaned, ears rigid, eyes fixed on the same point. He released another growl, deeper now, a warning and a question both. Cole exhaled, steadying himself. He hadn't come here seeking trouble. He had wanted only a quiet hunt, a day to forget. But fate had different plans. He met Echo's eyes. "Stay," he ordered softly. The dog whined low in protest but obeyed, sinking to the snow, muscles coiled. Cole shifted the safety on his rifle with careful silence. Then, heart steady, hands firm, he began to slide down the ravine toward the voice that had broken the cathedral hush of the forest. Cole descended the ravine with the slow, deliberate control of a man who had learned long ago that haste got people killed. The snow pressed against his knees as he slid and braced, rifle steady in his hands. Echo crouched above like a sentinel carved from fur and muscle. The moan had come again, faint but real, pulling him onward. At the base of the ravine, the terrain tightened into a narrow throat choked with briars. Cole pushed through, the thorns rasping across his coat, until the ground leveled into a shallow hollow. The smell of copper sharpened, mixing with damp stone. A seam of darkness opened in the cliffside, half hidden by a curtain of ivy stiff with frost. A cave, modest and jagged, the entrance barely taller than a man crouched. He stilled. Another sound came from within, a sharp inhale, ragged, then silence. Not an animal, human. He edged closer, boots whispering over ice. His eyes adjusted to the gloom inside. At first he saw only shadows, stone teeth, and the uneven gleam of frozen water on the walls. Then movement, a flinch, a curl into the deeper dark. His rifle lowered fractionally as his brain sorted the image. A figure pressed against the wall. She was young, mid-20s perhaps, her body huddled in on itself as if she could fold into stone. Her clothing was city-worn, what had once been a long wool coat, navy, now torn and soaked through, the hem crusted with snow and mud. Beneath it a pale blouse shredded at the sleeve, darkened by blood at her upper arm. She had dark brown hair tangled around her face, strands sticking to skin slick with sweat despite the cold. Her complexion was the pallor of exhaustion layered over natural olive tones, the kind of skin that once glowed with warmth but was now leached by fear and loss of blood. Her eyes, wide and green hazel, fixed on him with animal alertness. They were rimmed red, trembling not just from pain, but from suspicion. She looked like someone who had been chased too far and trusted too little. Cole froze, raising one open hand. His voice was low, careful. "It's all right. I'm not here to hurt you." She tried to press deeper into the cave, but her body betrayed her. A tremor of weakness ran through her arms. "Stay back," she rasped. The voice was hoarse, cracked at the edges. Echo padded silently down the slope, slipping into the cave mouth beside Cole. The dog's presence filled the shadows with a different kind of authority. His hackles were lowered, but his amber eyes stayed fixed on the woman. He whined once, soft, the way he did to calm frightened children in the towns Cole had sometimes passed through. The woman's gaze darted to the dog, and something in her expression loosened, a flash of recognition that an animal had no guile. "My name's Cole," he said gently, kneeling enough to be smaller, less of a threat. "That's Echo. We heard you." The woman swallowed hard, lips cracked. "Emily," she whispered. The name sounded foreign to her own mouth, as though she had nearly forgotten the sound of it. Cole studied her with the trained eye of both soldier and survivor. Emily was slim, perhaps 5'6", her frame not delicate but wiry, suggesting a woman used to moving quickly through crowded streets rather than forests. She had the look of someone out of place here, a creature of city lights trapped in winter's dark. She clutched a small leather handbag to her chest as if it were a shield, its strap frayed, zipper broken. Her knuckles were raw, scraped as though she had fallen more than once. "Where are you from, Emily?" Cole asked. She shook her head, eyes still fixed on him, calculating risk. "A city. Far east. Doesn't matter." Her voice cracked again. "They followed me." Cole's brows knit. "Who?" Emily's breath shuddered. She pressed a bloodied sleeve tighter against her arm as if to staunch memory as well as wound. "Men. I don't know their names." "Black truck, black coats. They were waiting outside my building. I ran. The mountains. I thought I could hide, but they—" Her words stumbled, fractured by fatigue. Cole's stomach hardened. He had seen this before, in other lands and languages, people hunted by shadows bigger than themselves. He scanned the cave quickly. No other movement, no second figure lurking, just Emily, battered, cornered. He set his rifle down across his knees, palms open. "You're bleeding." "Let me look." Emily hesitated, eyes flicking to Echo again. The dog sat calmly at the entrance, ears forward but posture non-threatening. Finally, with a small, reluctant nod, she shifted her arm outward. Cole moved closer, his hands practiced, steady. The wound was deep but not catastrophic, a gash torn across the upper arm, likely from sharp metal or glass. The edges were raw, blood seeping sluggishly in the cold. He peeled away the soaked fabric with careful fingers. She winced, but did not pull away. Her jaw was clenched, teeth gritted. That steel impressed him. Many would have screamed. "You need proper care," Cole murmured, "but I can stop the bleeding for now." From his pack he drew a strip of cloth, folded tight, and pressed it against the wound. Emily hissed in pain but kept still. He wrapped it snugly with steady hands, tying a knot that would hold. His mind moved like clockwork. Stabilize, shelter, then move. As he worked, Emily's gaze lingered on him. She saw not just a man, but the details of him, the scar across his cheek, the stiffness in his right shoulder, the way his eyes flicked constantly toward the cave entrance as if danger would materialize any second. She recognized in him the same thing she carried, someone marked by pursuit, by battles not yet done. "You're a soldier?" she asked. "Was," Cole replied shortly. He didn't elaborate. Emily gave a small, bitter laugh that collapsed into a cough. "Figures. Only a soldier would walk into a cave after hearing a stranger cry." Cole tied the knot tighter and met her gaze. Only a fool would ignore it. They sat in silence, the cave breathing around them. Outside, the snow fell heavier, dulling the world to gray. Echo shifted, ears twitching, then gave a low rumble. Cole stiffened. The dog's eyes were locked on the slope beyond the cave, his muscles taut. Emily's face blanched. "They'll come," she whispered. "They never stop." Cole lifted his rifle, his blue eyes narrowing into steel. He had not sought this fight, but it had found him. He glanced once at Emily, fragile yet unbroken, clinging to survival, and then at Echo, steadfast as stone. The quiet hunt was over. War had come to his woods again. He exhaled slowly, the weight of decision settling like the snow outside. "Then we'll be ready." The cave smelled of damp stone and faint iron, the kind of metallic trace that clung to wounded skin. Cole sat a careful distance from Emily, rifle balanced across his knees, listening to the quiet crackle of her shallow breaths. Echo lay at the entrance, his broad frame filling the opening like a living barrier, ears pricked forward, amber eyes alert to every snow-laden shift outside. Emily's hands trembled faintly as she clutched the ruined strap of her handbag, her knuckles white, her gaze darting between the cave's shadows and Cole's weathered face. Trust did not come easy. Her entire body was a ledger of fear, but the dog had bridged a space no man could. Echo had nudged her hand, resting his warm head beneath her fingers, and she had yielded the smallest smile, fragile but real. Cole studied her quietly, not as a soldier assessing a prisoner, but as a man measuring how close to collapse another human might be. She was perhaps 25, her thin frame wrapped in the remains of her wool coat, which had once been elegant but now hung like a battered flag. Beneath the torn fabric, her blouse clung damp with sweat and blood. Dark hair fell in disordered waves to her shoulders, streaked with melted snow and dirt. Her face bore sharp features softened by exhaustion, cheekbones too pronounced from hunger, lips cracked, lashes clumped by tears unshed. Yet her green-hazel eyes carried a fierce brightness, a kind of survival that refused to dim even when terror pressed in. Cole broke the silence. "You said they followed you." "Start from the beginning." Emily's shoulders tensed, as though the words themselves weighed more than her wound. She drew a shaky breath. "I shouldn't even be alive," she said, her voice low, ragged. "They wanted me gone the second I saw it." "Who?" Cole asked, tone steady, stripped of impatience. "They're not just thieves, not just some gang." Emily's gaze shifted past him to the icy wall, as if replaying images she would rather bury. "They were men in suits at first. Clean, expensive. I thought they were just business types until they met behind my building." Her hand tightened on the handbag. "I was late from work, cutting through the alley. I heard shouting, so I hid. 2 black SUVs, men unloading crates. I peeked, just once." Her voice dropped lower, a whisper worn thin. "Inside the crates were guns. Military grade, not for sale at any shop. They were trading cash, passing documents. And I dropped my phone." It clattered. Her eyes closed, the memory ripping her composure. "They looked right at me. I ran." Cole felt the story fold into sense. He had heard of men like that, organized, funded, ruthless. He pictured them, predatory confidence, suits over body armor, the easy menace of people who owned fear like currency. He asked, "You recognize any faces?" Emily nodded slowly. "One, a scar across his chin. Tall, shaved head, like steel. The others called him Vance." The name anchored itself in Cole's memory. Vance. He could see him already, a man who had lived violence long enough for it to shape his body. Emily went on, voice steadier now, anger burning through the fear. "They chased me from the city." at the gas station, at the bus terminal, always behind me. When I tried to go to the police, 2 men in black were already in the lobby. I knew they'd bought someone. She swallowed hard. So I stole a car. I drove until the snow swallowed the road. When it crashed, I ran. I thought the mountains could hide me. But they keep coming. They won't stop until I'm gone. Silence hung heavy in the cave. Outside, the snow hissed against stone, a storm building teeth. Echo shifted, tail thumping once, as though to punctuate the confession. Cole leaned back against the wall, jaw tight. His mind flicked through angles. If this Vance led the pursuit, he would bring trained men, not amateurs. The fact Emily had survived this long was testament to luck and her own stubborn will. She had a survivor's edge, but luck was a currency that ran out fast. "Why tell me this now?" Cole asked finally. Emily's gaze cut to him. Her eyes glistened in the dim light. "Because I don't have anyone else. You could walk away. You could leave me here. But you came down that ravine when no one else would. That tells me you're not like them." Cole felt the words land heavier than he wanted. He had walked into the cave not to be a savior, but because he could not bear the echo of helpless cries. Now here she was, her trust placed like a weight in his hands. He thought of the boy in the desert again, brown eyes wide, dust clinging to his lashes. A boy he had failed. His chest tightened. Echo whined softly, pressing closer to Emily. She reached out, stroking the dog's head with hesitant fingers. The touch steadied her. The way Echo leaned into her palm gave her a flicker of control. "He believes me," she murmured. Cole rubbed his temple. "Echo believes the truth in people. That's his job." A sound outside cracked the silence, faint, distant, but real. A branch breaking under weight. Echo sprang to his feet, growl vibrating the cave walls. Cole was up instantly, rifle raised. He edged to the mouth of the cave, eyes narrowing through the curtain of snow. For a moment nothing moved but the storm. Then a shadow crossed between trees, tall, deliberate. Another followed. Emily's breath caught, body curling tight. "It's them." Cole didn't answer. His mind was already shifting through terrain, cover, escape routes. He had taken no oath to this woman, yet responsibility hooked deep into him all the same. She was hunted, bleeding, and he knew the type of men who hunted her. They would not stop, and they would not forgive. He looked back at her, eyes hard but calm. "You said they won't stop. That means we don't wait for them to come in. We prepare." Emily swallowed, trying to summon courage from the battered scraps left in her. "Prepare how?" Cole checked the rifle, then met her eyes. "By making sure this cave doesn't become your grave." The snowstorm thickened outside, hiding more than it revealed. Echo stood bristling at the entrance, ready to defend. In the shadows behind him, Emily clutched her bandaged arm, the truth finally spoken, her secret out. For Cole, there was no turning back. War had followed him into the mountains once again. The storm thickened as Cole eased Emily out of the cave, the snow biting at their faces, the air sharp with silence broken only by distant cracks of branches and the muffled crunch of boots not their own. Echo bounded ahead, his body taut with purpose, tail stiff, ears twitching toward every sound. He looked like a wolf bred for this wilderness, though his amber eyes flicked back often, checking his people were close. Cole steadied Emily with a firm grip, his right arm under her uninjured shoulder. She stumbled but kept moving, her breath rasping shallow clouds into the freezing air. Her coat flapped raggedly behind her, soaked and frayed, yet she pushed on with stubborn determination. Cole's mind ticked like a metronome, already mapping terrain. The snow was a traitor tonight. Every step they made carved a message for the hunters. He needed to break the story those tracks would tell. He angled them across frozen stone, led them along fallen logs, doubled back through a stand of firs where the branches shed snow heavy enough to bury footprints. Each maneuver cost time, but time was cheaper than being found. Behind them, voices cut through the windmen calling, low and sharp. Among them was one that carried authority, gravel-edged, commanding without raising volume. Cole had no doubt. Vance was there. He remembered the description Emily had given. Tall, shaved head, scar across his chin. Cole could picture him now. Men like Vance carried their history in their bones, violence shaping posture and glance. He would not be reckless. He would hunt with the precision of a predator. Through the snow, another sound emerged, a baying howl, deep and long. A dog, not echo. A hound trained to track. Cole swore under his breath. He knew the breed before he saw it. Bloodhound, the kind whose nose could drag the truth from stone. Minutes later, they reached a thicket where Echo froze, ears angled to the left. Cole crouched, scanning. Through the veils of snow moved a shadow, a man broad as a wall, leading a leash taut with muscle and fury. The hound strained, nose glued to the ground, voice rising in barks that cracked the storm's hush. Cole focused on the handler. He was in his late 30s, burly, 6 feet but thick through the shoulders and chest. His beard was coarse, black streaked with frost, jaw heavy. A knitted cap pulled low over his ears, but his eyes were visible, small, hard, restless. His name, Cole guessed from Emily's whispers later, was Harris, one of Vance's enforcers. Harris had once worked as a county deputy, Emily muttered through clenched teeth. A man who knew the law but sold it for darker pay. The uniform gone, but the arrogance remained. He walked like every trail belonged to him. Harris's voice cut through the wind. "She's close." "The mutt's got her." The hound bayed louder, straining toward the rocks where Cole had just led Emily. Cole's pulse slowed. Panic was the enemy. He guided Emily behind a cluster of snow-burdened pines, pressing her low. Her green-hazel eyes were wide, fear shaking her frame, but she held her breath when he raised a finger to his lips. Echo crouched beside them, silent, muscles trembling with restrained energy. Cole assessed options. They couldn't outrun a hound in open snow. They had to confuse it. He thought fast snow to mask scent, water to break trail. He recalled a stream nearby, shallow but running under a skin of ice. If they could reach it, the water might steal their trail. But the way there was open ground. Harris and the hound were closing in. Cole made a decision. He whispered to Emily, voice low, steady. "When I move, follow Echo. He'll take you downwind to the stream. Don't stop. Don't look back." Emily's lips parted, trembling. "What about you?" He forced a tight smile, the kind soldiers used to lie without words. "I'll buy you time." She looked at him, saw the scar on his cheek, the calm in his icy eyes, and realized he meant it. Something in her broke open trust, raw and painful. She nodded. Cole rose from the cover, rifle in hand, and let the snow carry his figure into Harris's line of sight. The hound barked furiously, jerking the leash, pointing directly at him. "There!" Harris shouted, dragging the beast forward. His face split with a cruel grin. "Got you now, soldier boy!" Cole fired a single shot not at the man, but at the ground, kicking up snow and bark, the echo booming through the forest. Harris ducked instinctively, cursing. In that heartbeat of chaos, Cole whistled low. Echo bolted, nudging Emily ahead, their bodies melting into the storm's white veil. Cole shifted his stance, retreating sideways, drawing Harris and the hound toward him. He moved like a phantom, boots silent over drifts, rifle steady. Harris bellowed insults, tugging the leash hard as the hound dragged forward. The storm roared, swallowing sound and vision. Cole vanished between trees. The enemy locked on him, blind to the woman slipping away. And somewhere beneath the howl of the wind, Emily's footprints vanished into the stream, Echo guiding her steps, while Cole's shadow remained to face what came next. The snowstorm had thinned to a flurry, but the air still carried a razor's edge, biting into skin and stealing breath. Cole moved with calculated silence through the pines, the barrel of his rifle angled low, his boots finding steady ground even on treacherous drifts. He had peeled Harris and the bloodhound away long enough for Emily and Echo to vanish into the stream, but he knew more hunters lingered. Men like Vance never traveled with just one hound and one enforcer. They spread out, wove nets, and tightened them around prey until no path remained. He crouched near a fallen spruce, its trunk thick as a wall, and scanned the tree line. Shadows shifted, 3 figures breaking formation, advancing with the confidence of men who believed their quarry was already cornered. The first was a wiry man, late 20s, pale face with sharp angles, a patchy blonde beard clinging to his jaw. His eyes flickered constantly, jittery, restless. His name, Cole recalled from rumors in town, was Miller, a small-time hustler turned gunrunner. Miller's body spoke of nervous energy. He carried his rifle like a crutch, not a tool, and his lips moved silently as if whispering reassurance to himself. Beside him walked a man of opposite weight, Rourke, thick-bodied, mid-40s, a neck like a stump, and arms straining against his jacket. His face was scarred by old burns that twisted one side of his mouth into a permanent half-sneer. Rourke had once been a steelworker before an accident stripped him of steady work and gave him a taste for violence. He moved slow, deliberate, as if daring anyone to challenge the bulk he carried. The third shadow was leaner, female, her stride efficient, precise. Dana, a name Cole didn't know until Miller muttered it under his breath, was early 30s, tall and athletic, with dark auburn hair tied back in a harsh knot. Her skin was pale against the night, cheekbones sharp, eyes narrowed to cold slits. A pistol rode her hip, but she carried a hunting bow across her shoulders, the string taut, quiver strapped at her back. She radiated discipline, the kind of cold focus of someone who didn't waste words or bullets. Cole's stomach hardened. He had no desire for another battlefield, yet here it was. He watched the way they spread, the pattern of predators, and chose his ground. He slid back, drawing them into a narrow clearing rimmed by boulders and half-fallen trees. The snow was deep here, thigh-high drifts concealing uneven ground, roots and hollows. To untrained eyes it was just terrain. To Cole it was a trap waiting to be written. He had learned long ago that the earth itself could be a weapon if you knew its grammar. He crouched, pressed his gloved hand into the snow, and carved a shallow trench leading into the clearing. He kicked loose snow over patches of ice-slick stone. He angled branches in the drifts to suggest movement that wasn't real. Every mark he made was a sentence designed to be misread. The hunters followed, their footsteps crunching closer. Miller muttered, "He's here, I know it," his voice thin with excitement. Rourke grunted, scanning slowly. Dana's eyes darted everywhere, calculating, her bowstring creaking faintly as she pulled it half ready. Cole inhaled, steady, then made his move. He shifted behind a pine, snapped a branch deliberately, and let the sound travel. Miller spun instantly, firing into the noise. The shot cracked loud, echoing off stone, snow spraying. Rourke swore. Dana hissed, "Idiot," but the trap was already closing. Cole fired once, not at them, but at the drift above. Snow collapsed in a heavy sheet, burying Miller waist-deep, knocking him off balance. He screamed, flailing. Rourke lunged forward to pull him free, his bulk sinking deep into the hollow Cole had carved earlier. He stumbled, cursing, stuck. Dana raised her bow, eyes sharp. But before she loosed, Echo burst from the tree line with a guttural snarl. He had circled back, guiding Emily to safety, and now rejoining Cole. His gray-tan form shot like a missile, slamming into Dana's side. She cried out, tumbling into the snow, her bow scattering from her grip. Cole advanced, rifle steady, every step precise. "Drop it," he barked at Rourke, who had managed to wrench free but now stood half-crouched, his pistol lifting. Rourke snarled, burned lip curling, and squeezed off a shot. The bullet whined past, tearing bark. Cole returned fire, striking the tree inches from Rourke's head. Snow cascaded down like ash. Miller, still half buried, whimpered, "We're dead, man. He's gonna kill us." "Shut up," Dana spat, shoving Echo off with desperate strength, scrambling for her pistol. But the shepherd was relentless, teeth flashing, jaws clamping onto her arm with a growl that vibrated the clearing. Cole moved in, pressing the fight tight. He swept his rifle's barrel across the 3, his eyes cold, voice even. "You walk away now. You live. Take one more step. You don't." The storm's howl filled the silence between them. Miller panted, shaking, his rifle lost in the snow. Rourke glared, face twisted with fury, but his gun hand trembled. Dana struggled under Echo's grip, her face pale, lips pressed thin in fury, but not fear. Cole's finger brushed the trigger guard, ready, calm. He knew they weren't beaten forever. This was only a reprieve. But reprieve was all he needed. He whistled sharply, and Echo released Dana, retreating to Cole's side, his teeth bared, amber eyes blazing. "Go," Cole ordered. His voice carried the weight of someone who had buried too many bodies already. The three backed away, dragging Miller from the snow, Dana clutching her torn sleeve, Rourke muttering curses. They disappeared into the trees, their footsteps swallowed by the storm. Cole stood motionless until the last sound faded. Then he exhaled, a long, weary breath, and lowered his rifle. Echo leaned against his leg, panting softly, eyes still alert. Somewhere deeper in the forest Emily waited, trusting him to keep the hunters at bay. For now, he had bought her that time. The night pressed heavy, the storm easing into a brittle calm that left the forest drowned in silence. Cole guided Emily to a hollow tucked beneath an overhanging ridge of stone, its mouth narrow and rimmed with snow-laden brush. The space inside was tight, no more than a shallow chamber of rock, but it shielded them from the wind. Echo padded in first, his broad body brushing the walls as he sniffed every corner. Satisfied, he lowered himself across the entrance, a living barrier of fur and muscle, his amber eyes glowing in the firelight once Cole struck a flame. The fire was small, built of thin branches gathered from under fallen logs. Cole kept it smokeless, feeding only what was needed for warmth. The glow painted his scarred face in shifting amber, sharpening the angles of his jaw and catching the faint silver in his stubble. He crouched near the fire, hands outstretched, though his eyes kept sweeping to the entrance where Echo stood guard. Emily sat opposite him, her back against the stone wall, knees drawn close beneath her torn coat. In the firelight, she looked both fragile and fierce, a young woman bruised by fear yet unbroken by it. Her lips were pale, her cheeks gaunt, her blouse still blood-stained beneath the makeshift bandage Cole had tied. Her green-hazel eyes, however, were clear now, the fog of panic replaced by something harder. For long minutes the only sound was the crackle of sap bursting in the fire. Then Emily's voice came, soft, almost swallowed by the flames. "I wasn't supposed to be here. I should be home." Cole said nothing, letting the words move at their own pace. "My family," she whispered. "My mother, my little brother. He's only 16. They're waiting for me in the city. They think I'm working late, maybe out with friends. They don't know I've been running for my life. If these men keep moving guns, keep buying off police, it won't stop with me. More people will be hurt, maybe worse." Her voice cracked, tears glinting at the edges of her lashes. Echo shifted at the entrance, as if responding to her pain. He let out a soft whine, his head tilting. Emily's mouth trembled into a faint, broken smile, and she reached to stroke the air in his direction, though the dog was too far for her touch. Cole studied her. Her confession wasn't just fear, it was resolve, the kind that hardened under pressure. He recognized it. He had seen soldiers speak of loved ones the night before missions. Emily's thin frame hid a steel he hadn't expected. "You want to fight them," he said finally. She lifted her eyes to his, the flames reflected in the green hazel depths, turning them molten. "I can't do it alone. But I can't run anymore either. If I disappear, they win, and they'll just find someone else to silence." Cole leaned back, shoulders pressing into stone. He stared at the fire, at the sparks that spiraled and died. His mind recoiled from the weight in her words, yet his chest tightened in the familiar way it had on nights before battle. He had sworn he was done with responsibility, done with wars not his own. But war had a way of finding him, sometimes in deserts, sometimes in snowbound forests, sometimes in the eyes of a woman refusing to break. Memories rose unbidden. A boy with dust in his lashes, a hand slipping from his grip in a city half a world away. Cole pressed his eyes shut until the image blurred, then opened them again, gaze locking on Emily. "Once I start this," he said slowly, "there's no going back. These men won't stop. You understand that?" Emily nodded, chin lifting though her body trembled. "I understand. But I'd rather face them than hide forever." The fire popped sharply, echoing her words. Cole exhaled through his nose, a low sound half between surrender and resolve. His hand reached for his rifle, resting it across his lap. He looked to Echo, who met his gaze with a calm, steady presence. The shepherd's ears flicked once. His tail thumped faintly, as if in agreement. "Then we do this smart," Cole said, voice steady now. "No reckless moves. We use the land. We control the ground, not them. And when the time comes, we end it." Emily's eyes softened, a tear slipping free, but her mouth formed the smallest smile. Relief, gratitude, and a flicker of courage mingled there. She wrapped her arms tighter around herself, leaning toward the fire, not just for warmth, but for the first fragile sense of safety she'd felt in days. The flames danced, painting shadows across stone and skin. Outside, the forest waited, silent but alive with unseen hunters. Inside, the hollow became something more than shelter. It was a forge, and in its heat a new resolve was cast. For Cole, it was not peace he had found in the mountains, but purpose. The first light of morning spread across the Appalachian ridges, tinting the snowbound trees in hues of pale gold and silver. The storm had broken during the night, leaving behind a silence so vast it felt almost sacred. Cole rose before Emily stirred, his movements quiet, deliberate. He checked the rifle, tested the air with every sense, and glanced at Echo, who was already standing at the mouth of the stone hollow, tail low but wagging once as if to say the world outside had shifted. Cole had been thinking through the long night. Fighting in the woods could buy them time, but time was a currency he was no longer willing to spend recklessly. Emily's strength had grown, her resolve hardened, yet her body still bore the toll of wounds and exhaustion. Alone, she would not survive another night in these mountains with Vance's men circling. He needed to help someone who could end this with law, not just bullets. As Emily stirred, stretching stiffly under her battered coat, Cole crouched near the fire's ashes. "We're moving," he said simply. His voice carried the calm of a man whose decision was already set. Emily blinked sleep from her eyes, her hair tangled around her face. She looked thinner than before, her cheeks hollowed by days of fear, but her eyes shone clear. "Where?" she asked, already knowing he had a plan. "There's an old ranger trail," Cole explained, shouldering his pack. "Leads down to a maintenance road. If we leave signs, the right people will see. I know a man in town, Captain Ross. He was state police before retirement. He won't ignore what I leave behind." Emily nodded slowly, pressing her lips together. The name gave her something tangible, a thread of hope to hold. They moved at first light. Echo led them, his paws crunching across the crusted snow, nose low, ears twitching. Cole guided Emily along paths that masked their presence, over frozen streams, across rocky slopes where boots left little mark. But then, when the time was right, he did the opposite. He left signals, not careless trails, but deliberate ones. He scraped the bark of a pine in the pattern only men of the service would recognize. 3 parallel lines with a cut across, a signal meaning danger but survivors present. On another tree, he tied a strip of red cloth torn from Emily's ruined blouse, fluttering like a flag of warning. At a bend in the trail, he pressed a cartridge casing into the snow, glinting faintly in the light. These were not signs for Vance's men, but for someone who would understand their language. Hours passed, the cold gnawing at every joint. Emily stumbled more than once, but each time Echo circled back, nudging her forward with his solid body, his eyes urging her on. She smiled through exhaustion, whispering, "Thank you, soldier," to the dog who had become her anchor. By noon, the hush of the woods shattered. Voices echoed up the valley, shouts, curses, the baying of the bloodhound. Vance's net was tightening. Cole steered Emily toward a narrow pass where the ridge opened into a clearing. It was there, at the far end, that figures appeared through the haze. Not the hunters. Uniformed men, their outlines crisp against the snow. Deputies in heavy coats, rifles slung. At their head strode a tall figure wrapped in a navy parka, his presence commanding yet measured. His hair was white at the temples, his jaw square, a neatly trimmed beard flecked with gray. His eyes, sharp and dark, scanned the woods with the steadiness of a man who had read violence before and survived it. This was Captain Daniel Ross, late 50s, broad-shouldered but lean, the kind of man whose authority came not from shouting, but from quiet certainty. Once, long ago, he and Cole had crossed paths during joint operations. One soldier, one officer. Trust had been built in silence, in battles neither had ever spoken of since. Ross lifted a hand in greeting, his voice steady. "Cole Thatcher. Knew it had to be you when I saw the marks. You've still got the old habits." Cole inclined his head, relief flickering in his icy eyes. "You came." "I brought men who listen," Ross said simply. He glanced at Emily, his gaze softening as he took in her battered state, then hardened again. "We'll end this today." Behind Ross, deputies spread into formation. Their discipline stood in sharp contrast to the ragged swagger of Vance's hunters, and as if on cue, the woods erupted. Vance's men burst from the trees, Miller and Rourke among them, Dana limping with her arm bound, Harris hauling the bloodhound. At their center strode Vance himself. Vance was a striking figure, early 40s, tall and broad-shouldered, his shaved head gleaming, the scar across his chin a white slash against ruddy skin. His eyes were pale gray, cold and unreadable, the kind of eyes that stripped pretense from men. He wore a heavy leather coat, black gloves, and carried himself with the swagger of someone convinced of his invincibility. The clearing held its breath. Guns raised, shouts rang, but Ross's voice cut sharp and commanding. "Drop your weapons! You're done." For a heartbeat, it seemed blood would be spilled. But then Echo stepped forward, growling, his body a coiled spring of muscle. Emily, tears cutting clean lines through her dirt-streaked face, clung to Cole's sleeve. Cole stood calm, rifle steady, his presence radiating unspoken promise. He would not let her be taken. Perhaps it was the sight of uniforms, perhaps the inevitability written in the numbers. But one by one, Vance's men faltered. Harris muttered a curse and lowered his gun. Dana spat blood into the snow but released her weapon. Miller dropped his rifle with shaking hands. Only Vance resisted, his pale eyes locked on Cole with a glare that promised this wasn't over. But even he, surrounded, finally raised his hands. When the cuffs clicked shut, Emily collapsed against Echo, burying her face in his thick fur. The shepherd licked her cheek once, a gesture of loyalty unshaken by storms or blood. Her tears were not only relief, but release. Cole stood watching the sun crest the ridge, its golden light spilling across the frozen forest. For the first time in years, warmth touched his chest. He had not only protected Emily, he had rediscovered a part of himself he thought buried forever. Purpose, fragile but real, rising like the dawn. Sometimes, miracles do not arrive with thunder or lightning. They come quietly, in the footsteps of a loyal dog, in the courage of a wounded woman, or in the steady hands of a weary soldier who refuses to give up. In the frozen silence of the Appalachian woods, Cole and Emily discovered not only rescue, but the unshakable truth that even in the darkest winter, God's light finds a way to break through. And isn't that the same in our daily lives? When we feel lost, hunted by our troubles, or burdened by scars we think no one sees, God often sends help in unexpected forms. A kind word, a friend's embrace, or even a stranger who chooses compassion over fear. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to share it, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel so together we can keep telling stories of hope, courage, and the quiet miracles that surround us. May the Lord bless you, keep you safe in every season, and remind you, through every hardship, that His love is the truest shelter in the storm.